But the study of philosophy brought me to the point where, just before my ordination, I was beginning to see the serious flaws in Greek philosophy, the very philosophy on which much of Christendom itself stood. At about this point, Father John Frank asked me to spend a summer in Israel. I had never thought of going to Israel, and when he asked me, I thought, Israel? And I said no, I didn't want to go. But then as the summer was approaching and I realized I was going to have to spend it at our house in Brookline, I thought, this is the most boring place in the universe. I'll go anywhere. So I went to Israel. What? Something happened to me in Israel. Maybe I'll talk about that later. But also around this time, a question Ernest once raised, supposedly in passing, began to take shape for me. It's Ernest Fortin. He asked, this is substantively what the question was, how does Christianity stand when Christendom falls? How do you keep Christianity from going down with the Christendom that was passing away? Here it was. This was the problem. Christendom was built in part on faulty philosophical foundations, and now they were collapsing. But Christianity itself must not fall. It was somehow because of this, because of the fall of Christendom, and what Ernest helped me see was the crisis of modernity, that I had always sensed that something was wrong. This is what was happening. For myself, for the church, for Christian education, for the larger world, this was the question that had to be addressed. Where does Christianity stand when Christendom falls? Or otherwise put, where does Christianity stand in the modern world? Ernest, in good Augustinian fashion, had pushed me early on to face the terrible questions raised by some of the fiercest critics of Christendom. He gave me a kind of directed readings course in my senior year, which he called the Anti-Christian Polemic. Rough stuff for a pious young guy such as I was. I had to look the likes of Friedrich Nietzsche square in the face and deal with it. God is dead, he said. The old order is gone. Nietzsche makes this perfectly clear. He also, however, makes perfectly clear something else, that the pretensions of the modern philosophers, ideologues, and political founders to stand in the place of Christendom, all on their own, to establish a brave new order of human life, that they are a good deal more flawed than Christendom ever was, and that such an order cannot stand. For all its great imperfections, Christendom, with great wisdom, acknowledged a human domain beyond the reach of political power. Human perfection and the highest human virtues are founded in the covenantal love of God and neighbor. Such love is free and can in no way be compelled, not even by God himself. And the highest human goal, as Augustine saw it, was the ordering of all human things into the right relationship with God and eternal peace. Such peace is altogether beyond the reach of political power. Political power doesn't very well succeed even doing what it's supposed to do, restraining the worst of human evils, chief among which is the unfettered desire for power. Political power cannot bring about the greatest good. In Christendom, this was understood. Every day, the ambitious men of Christendom, kings and popes both, experienced in the Eucharist, which was then the cultic center of Christendom, they experienced the sacrifice of the Christ whom they worshipped, Christ the King, who died at the hands of political power rather than assume it himself. In Christendom, political power bowed, however grudgingly, to the image of God in man, rather than compelling all men to bow in worship to political power. But the modern project aims precisely at the use of political power to impose on us a kingdom of perfect justice, of equal rights for all human beings universally, of boundless state compassion, with the power to help everybody, to provide universal and perpetual peace, the conquest of disease and poverty, delaying death. In short, as Bacon put it, the relief of man's estate, or nothing less than salvation itself. And it's going to do this by the use of political power. Modernity transforms the supra-political goals of Christianity that marked the limits to political power into the entirely imaginary and deceptive rationale for the appropriation of boundless political power, total power. But total power does not mean salvation. Total power means totalitarianism and leads directly to the global disorder and human abasement of which we have already seen plenty more than enough. This too is what is happening. So where to turn? I didn't know. Just a few years after my ordination, I was a wreck. I left off teaching, took up ministry in the boondocks of central Quebec, even a place more remote than Rogerstown. It was 120 miles of dirt road to reach this little village in the center of Quebec. So I went to Quebec and later to an Indian reservation in Maine and slowly thought things through. It was then that I rediscovered Augustine. Augustine is all about what is happening. And he had the wisdom in his City of God to discover the source for asking his question and for living that question, not in Greek wisdom, but in the book that actually is foundational to Christianity and that tells what's happening, the whole story from the beginning to the end. The City of God is a continuation of the story as it is told in the Bible. And for myself, because of what had happened to me in Jerusalem, I was made able to discover the Bible anew as the book that in truth tells our story, even as it grasps events on the most personal scale and across the great span of human history. And I saw that between the most personal story and that great span of all history, for the Bible, there is the story of the people of the Bible. In a most particular and concrete and ever-relevant way, in the story of the Jewish people, not just in the past, but in the stunning events happening in their life even after the fall of Christendom, and in the bloody jaws of modernity. And still now in Jerusalem, rebuilt in our day, there I could see better than anywhere else the great stirrings of what is happening. So after I came back from the north, I traveled to Israel again, spent a year studying there. The seed that had been planted in my first trip 15 years before, the one John Frank sent me on, had sprouted and taken deep root, and I came to understand that my story and the story of Christianity stands here with the story still turning its pages before our eyes. How this is so is a matter for another time, but that this is so came to me to be how it is. Asking earnest questions brought me to this, and when I teach, what I want my students to see is they too have a story, and that its roots are not in slavery to professional success, or in the achievements of the technological project, or in some quiet retreat into sheltered self-absorption, but that their story, if they let it liberate their minds and hearts, is part of the greatest and truest of all stories, where their human dignity and freedom is made clear and made real and has its great tasks cut out for them, and where, in what is happening, even what is eternal is taken into account. Thanks.